Zoom.
Oh,
Hey, Jeff,
all right.
Jeff Tremaine, how you doing?
What's happening?
Hey.
I've been watching your documentary, Nothing But a Good Time, the uncensored history of 1980s hair metal, and thoroughly enjoying it.
Oh, cool. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mark was watching it as well and loving it, and I was not a big fan of this music, but the personalities and the crazy shit. I was really a Skinny Tie guy. And an Elvis Costello guy, but I mean, I love rock and roll of all kinds, and this is you must be a huge fan, I assume.
No, to be honest, I'm sort of the same. I was more of a punk rock little skater kid, in the 80s. That, I liked Motley Crue fine. I didn't, I never really saw them in concert. I didn't really follow them. And I did the movie The Dirt, the biopic on Motley Crue, and the reason I wanted to do that so bad was having read the book. It really felt like they were covering the Jackass guys and me. Like it was very similar, like crazy. So,
well, I love the Steve-O story where Steve-O looked up every name or every hotel in the town that Ozzy was in to try and find Ozzy, and eventually he reaches the brother of the manager, and that's included in the documentary too. And he ends up going to the show. And how old was he then?
12.
Wow,
so he was a young kid, but yes, very motivated to find Motley Crue, and I will vouch that Motley Crue definitely inspired him to some bad behavior.
Yeah, that was Motley Crue. That's right. I was thinking it was Ozzy. But speaking of Steve-O, I don't know if you feel the same way I do. I'm very angry at Steve-O right now. He promised he was going to get big tits, and now he's backing off. The fuck?
Yeah, I think he feels bad about telling people what he's going to do, and then came to a reason not to. And I haven't really talked to him about it, but Steve-O does plenty of crazy stuff, and he's got plenty more coming. So,
Wow.
I know he does. I was just
don't be too upset with him because there's definitely more coming.
I'm trying not to be too hurt by this, but anyway, when you did The Dirt, it was kind of at a time where Me Too was coming on, and I wondered how much those guys were. Because they really celebrated all that craziness, especially in the book, and then it seemed like they kind of needed to back off or at least sort of refocus it a little bit. Was that tricky at all to do it? Because it didn't seem like much was left out.
I think it's it was in the back of everyone's mind, but you have to make it authentic, and it's got to feel true to the book. Like that was really important to me that the spirit not get lost. So, we did what we could.
I couldn't help thinking as I was watching your documentary today that hair is just so huge in music.
Yeah.
I mean, the Beatles. Well, I still remember my dad. Oh, their stupid hair, and and then hair metal, and short hair. It's just it stuns me how big a deal hair can be in making music work.
And to be honest, I kind of hate the term hair metal. I don't think like every band in the 80s had big hair, whether it was metal or new wave or punk or anything, right? Like hair, you're right. It was all about hair, but it's sort of a stupid box that they got put in that title. We ended up using it in the subtitle just because that's the category that tells you what it is. I think even a lot of the band members would refer to it when we did interviews as hair metal. So I felt okay putting it in the title, but.
How do you differentiate hair metal from glam and some of the other sort of subgenres that were part of it?
It's sort of the same, right? The hair and glam, the 80s glam, there was a 70s glam that influenced a lot of it, but the 80s glam is hair metal, right?
Yeah.
So.
But that's what makes the juxtaposition at the end. I think part 3 was my favorite part. But when Nirvana just blows up and they had such a different look, and I felt really bad for Stevie Rochelle talking about how he's like, well, all our look was derivative, and then boom, and I had never even heard of Tough, and I was a kid, I was 16 then.
Right.
So,
it's a perfect illustration of a scene dying when he tells you he's the fourth copy. It was a scene that ate itself more than Nirvana came in and nuked it, really. Like it was this, and Doc says it really well. It's like when we find something good, we make 50 copies of it, and eventually
ruin the good copy or the good version of it. Yeah.
It's always going to be a cultural shift. Like this was a scene that lasted 10 years. That's a long time for a scene to last. And it got very, there was a cultural shift in just kicking out the excess and all of the, it was definitely time for a change.
It seems funny analyzing, seeing these bands and then analyzing it on a real heavy level. It seems really funny to me,
Right.
but I can't help it. I mean, and like I said, I really did enjoy it. But you brought up Doc McGee, and this is a tough question. Does Doc McGee think he's hot now? Because I feel like he's been made over. His teeth are really white. Looks like a little more hair. Does he think he's hot now?
I don't think so. I think he doesn't give a shit, to be honest. He says it like it is. He doesn't. Yeah, he was awesome, man. I love Doc.
No, he's great, but is he paying a lot more attention to his appearance rather suddenly, or did I miss something?
I don't know him from back in the day, so I can't tell you.
Okay.
But he looks healthy, and he's a funny character.
He is. We'll do a Twitter poll and settle it that way.
And he has seen it all. That dude has been to hell and back. So
Yeah.
I don't know how you mashed all this into 3 episodes. There's so many things, and I'm sitting there going, well, he's got to cover Razzle's death. There's a lot of bad stuff to cover in there too. And then speaking when you were talking about Stevie Rochelle and the 4 pictures, where they all look the same, from Bret Michaels to Vince to him. There's so much great clips from back in the day. Did you sit and go through a bunch of them? Is that all PAs that do that? Because you dug
a
up
whole team involved, right? They would present me stuff, and I would dig around and find stuff, and then, clearance is a tricky thing, like both music and archival stuff. We were lucky that Paramount was our partner on this, because they have all the MTV archives, and so that helped.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted to get at. Was there something you couldn't use? Because there was no. I think there's very little Ozzy in it. There was very little Slash.
Yeah, there was definitely stuff we couldn't use. So, and that's frustrating, but we had a pretty good pool of things to choose from that we could use. So I feel like I didn't feel that limited by that. Okay. So
the best clip, Drew, I don't know if you remember seeing this, but it's the lady talking about Shout at the Devil, and she's talking about being Satan worshipers. and
her son is sitting there
rolling his eyes.
There's a side-eye looking up at her.
That was really good.
So great.
You had some Quiet Riot rehearsal video from 1979. That seemed like something out of nowhere. I've never seen that before.
They rocked, right? Like, they were so good.
Guns N' Roses, we were just talking about this before you zoomed in here. Mark thinks Guns N' Roses is a hair band, and I am really struggling with that, even thinking about that.
Yeah.
What are they if they're not a hair? That genre.
Musically, they're not a hair band.
Well, but they are, right? Like, they're born out of that scene. It's that scene. That scene has range. It's not just this poofy.
But they don't have high hair.
They had a lot of hair, though.
They did have a lot of hair.
I felt bad for Tracy Guns, by the way.
Tracy's great, right? He landed on his feet, and he's just got a perspective on it. I don't think he wants you to feel sorry for him.
Sure.
Well, what did you mean by that, Mark?
Well, because I felt like maybe he was justifying that. It was okay that I left Guns N' Roses after we combined. And you're right, he did have a career, but it's like nothing. And to his credit, he's like, well, nobody saw him getting this big.
Right. But he also had a premonition that it was going to kill him. And that's probably accurate, right? There's like the fact that they all survived is a miracle. Like, even
no, Steven Adler especially, but Izzy Stradlin. I mean, he was such a force within Guns N' Roses, and honestly, they didn't write that much great music once he's gone. But he said he just couldn't do it, and I respect that.
Right, like he's the soul of that band in a lot of ways, right? And we're trying to show that, right? There's a lot to.
Sure.
It's a complicated story to tell their origin story.
I'll tell you somebody I felt bad for, and I'm blaming you, Jeff, for bringing it up to Winger. I can't believe you brought up the Beavis and Butthead thing. They so did not want to talk about that.
I know.
It was important.
But it's cool to hear Corey, like, the singer of Slipknot, he's defending, like, we're showing that light joke really fucked them, right? It really screwed them up. So, yeah, I don't know. I felt bad about that too, but it really did illustrate how destructive it could be.
But if your career is hanging by that slim a margin, that a joke on Beavis and Butthead can really hurt you that much, I mean, that you could not have made that joke and destroyed Van Halen.
Yeah.
Right. I think, we're at the end of the scene. when that happens. It's one of the fractures. That's what I'm trying to show. Like the fractures were coming. Nirvana's coming. Beavis and Butthead's after it. Like, and the scene is a parody of itself in many ways. So.
I haven't finished the documentary, but I wondered how many people, when Nirvana hit, and that was pretty explosive. Being in radio at the time, we felt it pretty immediately, and I think most people did. But did a lot of those musicians realize, like, oh my God, I'm fucked? Like when the Beatles played Ed Sullivan, a lot of people felt like, oh my God, I'm going to be in the back seat for a while. Did musicians in 1991 or 92 or whatever year that was feel the same way?
Yeah, I think so. I think it took a minute for it to be real for them, but it was almost instantaneous. You just don't realize it until, holy shit, my arenas just all got canceled and there's nobody filling these seats anymore.
It's kind of a difficult thing to pivot from, though, because your whole look is something and your music is, and then all of a sudden you have to just change all of it. It's quite the 180 to make. And
yeah,
he didn't nuke it. I don't think it really nuked Guns N' Roses out of business and some of these other, but it was pretty, a devastating cultural shift that happened quickly. Right. So.
Well, it's interesting. Like the Black Crowes were unaffected relatively. I mean, there were bands that were just so damn good, it wasn't going to matter. But it did really hurt a lot of people. I mean, the fact that it could impact Motley Crue, although they had a change in the band and all sorts of things. Anyway, nothing but a good time. The uncensored history of 1980s hair metal. I guess bring up Van Halen as a hair band. I'm just going to get voted down on that too.
That's a tricky one.
I think they were the model. They definitely set up. They were the influencer that everybody wanted to model after, right? Like the blonde-haired singer, the crazy guitar virtuoso. They set all the markers for what a hair band should be. Whether we argue that they are or aren't, I don't know. But
your doc taught us that David Lee Roth would hog the bathroom at the Rainbow, but not because he had to use the bathroom for voiding. I can't remember who it was. Someone said every time they tried to go to the bathroom at the Rainbow, David Lee Roth was inside getting a blowjob.
I thought he was referring to him doing cocaine in the bathroom for like the first minute, and then he came out with that. So I like the way that came about.
It's Don Dokken who said that.
And I have to thank you for all the years of Jackass that have given us so much pleasure over the years. Just that is such an aesthetically wonderful series, produced so well.
No.
Kudos, with flying dildos and all kinds of stuff.
The aesthetic of Jackass, but I appreciate it.
Was that a hard sell to like your parents and your family? Like, yeah, I'm doing this thing. It's kind of crazy, but I mean, did they really doubt this, or was it something like they're just behind you because they're your parents, or how'd that go?
They saw it coming because I was doing a magazine called Big Brother. It was a skateboard magazine that was very much the roots of Jackass. So they got to see it coming slow. But I will tell you a funny story. Like, I took my parents to the night Jackass opened, the first movie opened, and we were driving around theater to theater, and we started at like 4:00 in the afternoon on Friday when it opened, and there wasn't a whole lot of people in that theater. And my dad just looked at us like, "Oh, looks like we got a lemon."
No, did Larry Flint, was he the publisher of Big Brother? Was that
towards the end of it? Yeah, he was in the back half. So
Did you mix it up with Larry?
A little bit, yeah. We got in trouble, and Larry had to defend us, and he was happy to defend us. He likes being in trouble, I think. So
yeah. Hey, great guy to have on your side.
He was great to me. I have nothing bad to say about Larry Flint. Mm-hmm. Like, he was a very fair person to me.
Jack Russell, I honestly, when I first saw him, and of course he passed away just recently, but I thought, wow, he doesn't look well. Was it apparent to you that he was not well?
No, I had no idea. And to be honest, that's the one interview I didn't do because we were split crew at that point. But I didn't notice it until now. When I watch it, I do see it, but I didn't see it when we were editing it. But I'm just so glad we got those stories, and he's telling it vibrantly, right? So, and same with Stephen Riley, the drummer of Wasp, who also passed away. He was Wasp and LA Guns. And just to get those stories, permanently told in such a good, fun way, that I'm happy that we were able to get that.
I was glad too, because I did not know Jack Russell shot a maid and was supposed to go to prison for 8 years. I never knew that story. And then he was so blasé about, yeah, they cut it down to 4, they cut it down to 2, and by the time I got out, it was perfect timing.
That's the way he tells it. Like, and then there's a back and forth between him and Alan Niven, who's one of my favorite characters in this.
Yeah.
He managed Great Fight and managed Guns N' Roses, so that's a guy that's really been around the block of just put in some bad situations, and he had such a funny rapport with Jack as they're recalling stories.
Niven finally also cleared up the Steven Adler issue of why he was really fired from Guns N' Roses, because it wasn't drugs. They were all on drugs. And Niven just points out he couldn't play. He couldn't do the same thing.
Because of the drugs?
He couldn't he couldn't do the same drum beat twice. Is that what it was, Jeff?
That's what Alan says, and I wasn't there, but yeah, it seems, I've seen it where drugs gets in the way of you.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Productive.
Yeah, that's an amazing. I mean, the fact that he's still standing is just amazing. Jeff, before we let you go, I just want to know: are you gonna any stunts or Jackass crazed things that are in your future? Are you moving completely away from that, or?
Well, I'm always there's no Jackass thing to talk about, but I've got a few irons in the fire that are right in my wheelhouse. So hopefully one of those gets going soon. So
how about A Bad Trip 2?
Maybe.
I love that movie. I think it was so different, the way to do a candid camera thing, but in reverse. I don't know. I just loved it.
That's cool. Yeah, I did that and Bad Grandpa, which was similar as far as just, shooting a hidden camera movie that has a story. So.
Well, I've loved both documentaries. Is there another subject you would really desire to do a documentary on, or anything you have in mind?
No, I'm looking, because I love making documentaries. So I don't have the story locked down yet, but we're out there.
Hey, I'll ask you, not like you're an expert on it, but when I was watching the discussion about the US Festival, I was thinking, God, I feel like that's the festival that no one knows enough about, because I didn't go. I was so aware of it because I love all those bands. Is there a good documentary about the US Festival? Or is...
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's filmed very well, right? So there's good footage of all the bands that performed, and it's a crazy list of bands, including Van Halen, who got into a fight with the Clash over it. So there's I think there's good stories in it. I don't know. I saw that Woodstock '99 train wreck, and all right. I didn't love it, but it was all right.
It was very watchable. I just feel like it was one of those things that just kind of got lost on the historical radar. But anyway, Jeff, thanks so much for your time, and really enjoying nothing but a good time. I can't wait to finish it after the show, and I'm sure a lot of people will love seeing the uncensored history of 1980s hair metal. So many fans, and we love everything you're doing. So keep it up. Thanks so much. All right, Jeff Tremaine.
Who's in the background? Who was on the poster?
I thought it was
behind him.
Oh, he's still there.
Oh,
Who is that? Oh, is that Steve-O?
Chris Pontius from
Oh, it's
Jackass.
Chris Pontius. Oh, yeah.
Of course it is.
That's a Post-it note, like just temporary blocking.
Oh, for us. Oh, yeah.
yeah, blocking his penis. He's standing nude in some...
I loves being nude. What's wrong with that?
It's always nude.
I'm glad we got that from you. Thanks, Jeff. Every time Jeff's head moved, I would see it,
Yeah,
and then
like-
he would move his head
Yeah.
back, and I would forget that he was blocking
Who
a
is
penis
that?
with a Post-it over it.